Hey there, it's Sarah Matthews. Let me tell you about a moment that changed everything. Sarah Matthews had always been a survivor, a mother, a daughter, a woman who'd learned to build a life from the ashes of her past. But this wasn't just another story of triumph or rebuilding. No, this was about the quiet storm that had been brewing in the background of her life for years, a storm that was about to hit her full force. 5 years had passed since Sarah left her childhood home. 5 years of putting herself first for once. She had built a solid life in Los Angeles, managing a retail store, raising 2 kids, and finally breaking free from a marriage that had never fit her. Her independence had become her armor, a defense against the ever-constant tug of family obligations. But family has a way of pulling you back, even when you think you've escaped. And today, Sarah found herself standing on the front porch of her mother's house, the one place she swore she would never return to, not after everything that had happened. It was a place filled with memories, yes, but also resentment. Years of being the second-choice child, always living in the shadow of her brother, Jason. Jason, the one who could do no wrong, the one who had always been their mother's favorite, the one who never needed to try. Meanwhile, Sarah was left to pick up the pieces. But now she was back. And she wasn't the same woman who had left. The phone call had come just hours earlier, shattering the peace she'd carefully built. It was from Jason, his voice trembling, something rare for the always calm, always perfect older brother. Sarah. Mom's sick, the doctors. They don't think it's good. You should come home. The words hit her like a wave. She hadn't heard that tone in Jason's voice since they were kids, when something was wrong and no one knew how to fix it. She hated the thought of going back, but she had no choice. Family always has a way of pulling you back when you least expect it. As she stepped inside the house, the weight of it all settled over her. The same smell of old wood, dust, and forgotten memories filled the air. Nothing had changed here. The same floral wallpaper, the same worn-out couch, the same dim lighting that never seemed to make the place feel warm. Her mother, Linda, was sitting on the couch, her frail body shrinking into the fabric, her hands clasped tightly around a cup of tea. The sight of her mother, always so distant, always so cold, made Sarah's chest tighten. She'd never been the kind of woman to show warmth, and Sarah had long stopped seeking it. But today, there was something different in the air. An unsettling stillness. Sarah, Linda's voice was soft but tinged with something Sarah couldn't place. I didn't expect you to come. Sarah froze at the doorway. For years, her mother had been a stranger to her, a woman who had pushed her away in favor of Jason, the woman who had never really been there, the woman who, despite being family, had always made her feel like an outsider. But now, here she was, standing in the doorway of this house that was supposed to be a home, and all Sarah could feel was a simmering anger rising up from the pit of her stomach. Mom, Sarah replied, her voice steady but tight. You called me here. You know I didn't want to come back. I didn't think you needed me. Linda didn't respond immediately. She just looked at Sarah, her eyes tired, searching for something that she didn't seem to find. Finally, after a long silence, Linda spoke again, quieter this time. I've made mistakes, Sarah. I've always made mistakes. Sarah stood still, her heart racing. For a moment, she was afraid to even move. The woman who had broken her time and time again was speaking to her like this for the first time. It was a level of vulnerability Sarah had never seen before. But was it too late? Could there even be room for forgiveness in this house that had never felt like home? Mom, Sarah began, the words escaping before she could stop them. You always made it clear that Jason was the one you cared about, the one you trusted. You always put him first, and I was just the other one, the one who never mattered as much. Linda's eyes filled with regret, but there was something more there, something hidden beneath the surface. I never meant for you to feel that way. I was wrong, Sarah. I see that now. For the first time in years, Sarah felt the stirrings of something something she didn't quite understand. Anger, yes. Pain, of course. But maybe, just maybe, there was something more. Maybe there was room for a change. But as the conversation lingered, the tension grew. Because Sarah knew something her mother didn't. Something that would make everything change. She wasn't the same woman who had left this house. And as much as she hated to admit it, this was just the beginning. Sarah had always known that the walls of her childhood home were thick with secrets. But she never expected to find one so deep, so raw, hidden right under her nose. The house seemed to grow smaller as Sarah settled into the old living room, the heavy curtains drawn against the daylight. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the wall, marking time in a house that had felt frozen in place for years. The feeling was suffocating, and Sarah struggled to breathe, her thoughts spiraling as she tried to make sense of everything. After hours of strained silence between her and Linda, Sarah finally found the courage to push further, to demand more than the vague confessions her mother had offered. She had seen the cracks in her mother's perfect facade before, but today they were wider, more painful. Linda had let her guard down in a way Sarah hadn't expected, and it only made the situation worse. "Mom," Sarah began, trying to steady her voice, "you said you've made mistakes. But what kind of mistakes? Why now? Why are you telling me all this after all these years?" Her mother lowered her eyes, unable to meet Sarah's gaze. The silence was deafening. For a moment, Sarah feared her mother might say nothing at all. Then, in a barely audible voice, Linda spoke again. "It's about Jason." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She'd known for years that Jason had been their mother's favorite. But there was something in her mother's tone that suggested this was far more than just preferential treatment. Sarah felt her chest tighten as she leaned forward, trying to keep her emotions in check. "What about Jason?" Sarah pressed, her voice now edged with frustration. Linda's hands trembled as she gripped her teacup, her knuckles white. She seemed to be searching for words, but they were hard to come by. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Linda spoke, her voice heavy with regret. "I never wanted you to know this, Sarah. But Jason, he's been hiding things, big things, and I helped him. I made a choice to protect him." Her voice cracked as she spoke the words. "I thought it was the right thing to do, but now, looking back, I realize it was wrong. It was all wrong." Sarah's mind raced, but before she could speak, Linda continued, her words tumbling out faster now, as if she couldn't stop herself. "I've been covering for him, for years. All the decisions I made. It was all for him. When your father left, Jason was my rock. I needed him, and I was blind. I let him manipulate me into thinking everything he did was for the family." Linda's voice faltered. "But now I see that he's been using me, Sarah. He's been taking advantage of you too, of us all." The weight of her words hit Sarah like a ton of bricks. She couldn't breathe. The betrayal burned through her chest. She had always suspected something was wrong, but this was worse than she could have imagined. Jason, the golden child, had been pulling the strings all along, and their mother had been complicit in it. "You're telling me all of this now, after all these years?" Sarah's voice cracked, barely a whisper. Linda nodded slowly, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't want you to hate him. I wanted you to think everything was fine. But I can't lie anymore." Sarah stood up, her legs shaky as she paced the room. Her mind spun, her thoughts fragmented. She couldn't grasp the full scope of what her mother was saying. All these years, she had been living in a lie. Jason, her brother, wasn't just her mother's favorite. He was the mastermind behind the years of manipulation that had kept Sarah at arm's length. Her mother's indifference, her coldness. It wasn't just about her. It was about Jason. And now, this house, this family, was unraveling before her eyes. Later that night, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, the harsh overhead light casting shadows on the walls. Her mind raced as she replayed her mother's words over and over again. Jason had been manipulating their family for years, using their mother to cover his tracks. But how deep did it go? What had Jason done to entangle their lives so thoroughly? The questions gnawed at Sarah, pulling her deeper into a storm she wasn't sure she was ready to face. There was one thing Sarah knew for certain. This wasn't over. Far from it. She had to confront Jason. She had to know the truth. The man who had always been the perfect son, the perfect brother. He was nothing like the image he had carefully constructed. The next day, Sarah met Jason in the same coffee shop they had frequented during their younger years. He greeted her with a warm smile, the kind that always seemed genuine, like he had nothing to hide. But Sarah wasn't fooled anymore. She had seen the cracks in his armor. "Hey, sis, how's it going?" Jason asked casually, sliding into the booth across from her. Sarah looked at him, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. She fought to keep her emotions in check, to not let him see how deeply his betrayal had cut her. "Cut the crap, Jason," she said, her voice low but firm. "I know what you've been doing, and I know what Mom's been covering up. You've been pulling the strings all along, haven't you?" Jason's smile faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered, leaning back in his seat as though he hadn't just been caught in a lie. "You really don't know what you're talking about," he said coolly, but there was a flicker of nervousness in his eyes. "No, I know exactly what I'm talking about. All these years, you've used Mom, used me, used this family. And now, I'm done playing your game." Jason's eyes hardened, and for the first time, Sarah saw a glimpse of the man behind the mask, the person who had been hiding in plain sight. "You think you can just walk in here and accuse me of—" "I'm not accusing you, Jason," Sarah interrupted, her voice rising. "I'm exposing you. It's time everyone saw you for who you really are." The night had stretched on, the shadows in the old house growing longer as Sarah sat in the dimly lit kitchen, grappling with the revelations of the past hours. The faint smell of coffee still lingered in the air, mixing with the unsettling tension that had been building ever since her mother, Linda, confessed the truth about Jason. It felt like everything Sarah had ever known about her family was crumbling, each new truth heavier than the last. Jason, the golden child, the one who had always been her mother's favorite, he wasn't just a spoiled brat. He wasn't just someone who got special treatment because of his charm or his career. No, he was something far more dangerous. The knowledge hit Sarah in waves, each one more crushing than the last. Her mother's admission, how she had covered up Jason's lies, how she had made decisions that had affected Sarah's life in ways she never imagined, had shattered her, but the truth that was unraveling before her now was even worse. Jason had been manipulating their family for years, setting Sarah up to fail, positioning himself as the only one worthy of their mother's love, their family's resources, and their inheritance. And now, sitting in this house, everything Sarah thought she knew was on the verge of imploding. "I can't believe this is happening," Sarah whispered to herself, her fingers gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. She had been sitting in the same spot for hours, replaying her mother's words in her mind. They felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how deeply Jason had embedded himself into every corner of their family's life. How had she been so blind? Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a message from Jen, her best friend, the one person she had trusted to confide in through everything. She read it quickly, feeling a sharp pang in her chest. "Are you okay? I've been thinking about you. You need to talk about this, Sarah. Don't let him win." Sarah smiled bitterly, typing back with one hand. "I'm fine, just trying to process everything." But she wasn't fine. She was anything but fine. The house felt suffocating, her thoughts in turmoil. She needed answers, and she knew exactly where to find them. The next day, Sarah drove to Jason's office. She had avoided him for years, kept her distance because it was easier that way. He had always been the perfect son, the one who played the role of the successful lawyer with ease, while Sarah had quietly lived in the background, taking care of everyone else. But now she was done being the background player. She was done being the one who was ignored and dismissed. Jason was going to hear her, whether he liked it or not. His office was sleek, modern, the kind of place that screamed success. It was all shiny surfaces and minimalist decor. Nothing that felt warm, nothing that felt real. It was a facade, just like Jason. He looked up when she entered, his smile as charming as always. "Sarah, what a surprise," he said, rising from behind his desk. He walked over to her, his hands extended in greeting. "I didn't expect to see you today. What's going on?" His voice was too smooth, too practiced. Sarah's blood boiled at the sight of him, standing there like the perfect little brother, the one who had everything handed to him. But now she saw him for who he truly was. "I know everything, Jason," Sarah said, her voice flat but firm. "I know about the lies, the manipulation, everything. And I'm not going to let you get away with it anymore." Jason's smile faltered for just a moment, but he quickly regained his composure. "What are you talking about?" His voice was calm, almost too calm. "You're upset about Mom, I get it. But this isn't the time." "Stop lying!" Sarah's voice cracked, the fury inside her rising. "You've been lying to Mom, to me, to everyone. You've been controlling this entire family for years, and I won't stand by and let you get away with it any longer. I know about the investments, the business deals that you've manipulated to make yourself richer. I know how you've been using Mom's trust to cover up your tracks." Jason's face hardened, his eyes narrowing as he stepped closer to her. "You don't know anything, Sarah. You don't know what you're talking about, and you have no idea what you're really accusing me of." "I know enough," Sarah shot back, her chest tight with anger. "I know you've been using her. You've made her believe she was doing the right thing, and she covered for you because you made her believe you were the one who needed protecting. Well, I'm done. I won't let you hurt this family anymore." Jason laughed, a cold, bitter laugh that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "You really think you can stop me? You think you can turn Mom against me? You've always been jealous, Sarah. Always resented the fact that I was the one who could make her proud. But you don't get it, do you? I've been running this family for years, and there's nothing you can do to change that now." The words hit Sarah like a slap to the face. She could feel her pulse quicken, the heat of anger rising in her chest. But this time, she wasn't backing down. She wasn't the scared little sister who had always been ignored. "I'm not jealous of you, Jason," she said, her voice low but full of resolve. "I'm not going to let you destroy this family anymore. I'm going to make sure the truth comes out, no matter what it costs." The weight of the past few days hung heavily over Sarah, like a storm cloud, its presence thick in the air. The confrontation with Jason had left her rattled, but it had also ignited something inside her, a determination she hadn't realized she'd been missing. As much as she wanted to burn everything to the ground, to expose Jason for the manipulator he was, Sarah knew that revenge required more than just anger. It needed strategy. Her hand shook as she dialed Jen's number, her best friend, and the one person who had been with her through every dark moment. Jen had always been a source of strength, but now, Sarah needed her to help plan the next steps in a battle she never expected to fight. "Hey, what's up?" Jen's voice came through, light and easy, a stark contrast to the heaviness of Sarah's thoughts. "I need your help," Sarah said, her voice tight. "I'm done with just sitting back and letting Jason run things. He's been controlling everything for years, and I'm not going to let him get away with it." There was a pause, and Sarah could almost hear Jen's wheels turning through the phone. "I'm in, but we need to think this through," Jen replied, a note of concern creeping into her voice. "You're not just fighting Jason. You're up against Mom, too." Sarah felt the truth of those words like a slap. Linda, her own mother, had been complicit in the manipulation, covering for Jason, making excuses for him. Sarah had always wanted a mother's love, but now she was realizing that love had come with a price. "I know," Sarah murmured, her throat tightening, "but I'm tired of being the one who always gets pushed aside. I'm not going to be the invisible one anymore. Jason is going down, and I'll make sure Mom knows exactly what he's been doing. The next morning, Sarah stood in her mother's living room, facing the reality of what needed to be done. The house had never felt so empty. She could hear the echoes of laughter from her childhood, the sound of her parents' voices filled with promises that now felt like lies. But today, that empty space was filled with her determination. Linda sat on the couch, her hands folded in her lap, looking smaller than ever. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of sadness and guilt, but Sarah had no time for apologies now. The truth had to come out. "Mom," Sarah began, her voice steady but sharp, "we need to talk." Linda's eyes flickered to hers, and for a moment, Sarah saw the woman who had always been distant, always cold. "About what, Sarah?" Linda asked, her voice strained, defensive. "I know what Jason's been doing," Sarah said, her gaze never leaving her mother's face. "I know about the business deals, the money he's been hiding, the lies he's fed you. It's time to stop protecting him." Linda flinched, the color draining from her face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "You knew," Sarah continued, her voice growing more intense. "You've known for years, and you've let him manipulate everything. You've let him manipulate me." Linda's hands trembled as she clutched the fabric of her dress, avoiding Sarah's gaze. I thought I was doing the right thing. He needed me, Sarah. He was always the one who—" "Stop!" Sarah snapped, her voice cutting through the air like a knife. "Stop making excuses for him. He's been using you, using all of us, and it's time it ends." For a long moment, silence filled the room. The weight of Sarah's words hung heavy in the air, pressing down on both of them. Linda's lips trembled, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. She had never been a woman to show weakness, but now, in the face of her daughter's wrath, the cracks in her facade were undeniable. "I didn't know what to do," Linda whispered, the guilt in her voice so raw that it sent a chill down Sarah's spine. I thought I was protecting you, but now I see I was just protecting him." "I don't need protection from Jason, Mom," Sarah said, her tone hard. "I need you to wake up and see what he's done." The plan was set into motion. Sarah, with Jen's help, began to gather the evidence. Phone records, business contracts, emails, anything that could tie Jason to the web of lies and manipulations. She could feel the momentum building, each new piece of evidence adding to the pressure in her chest. This wasn't just about family anymore. This was about justice. Every night, after the kids were asleep, Sarah pored over the documents, organizing them with meticulous care. But even as she worked, doubt gnawed at her. What would this cost her? Was it worth it? She knew she was risking everything. Her relationship with her mother, her sense of family, the life she had built. But the answer came back to her, clear as ever. It was worth it. Jason had taken so much from her, from all of them. Now, it was time to take it back. The final confrontation loomed. Sarah knew it was only a matter of time before Jason would make his move. He had always been the one to control the narrative, but not this time. This time, Sarah was ready to take control. She called him, her hands trembling as she dialed his number. When he answered, his voice was smooth, confident, as if he had nothing to hide. "Sarah, what's going on? I thought we had already talked about this." "We haven't talked about everything, Jason," Sarah replied, her voice steady now. "But we will. I have everything I need to bring you down." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line, and then Jason's voice came, colder than before. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Sarah. You don't understand how deep this goes." "I understand more than you think," Sarah said, her eyes hardening. "And I'm done being the pawn in your game." Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air in her apartment felt thick, pressing against her chest as she sat at her desk, sifting through the final pieces of evidence. The documents she had gathered were stacked neatly on her side, and yet, as she read through them once more, something didn't sit right. Jason had always been careful, too careful. But now, with every email she uncovered, it felt as if she were walking a razor-thin line. One wrong move, and it could all fall apart. It had been weeks since Sarah started gathering everything she needed. The pieces were falling into place: legal documents, financial records, a trail of lies that Jason thought he'd kept hidden. She'd done everything by the book. She had all the ammunition she needed to bring him down. But as the time for confrontation grew closer, Sarah felt a creeping sense of unease. Was she making the right choice? Was there a chance, however slim, that she had misunderstood something? She needed clarity. Jen had been her rock throughout all of this, and Sarah knew that if anyone could offer a new perspective, it was her. With a sigh, Sarah picked up her phone and dialed her best friend. "Jen, I need to talk," Sarah said, her voice shaking with tension. "Of course," Jen replied, already sensing the gravity in Sarah's tone. "What's going on?" "I've been looking over everything again. The evidence, the contracts, the emails," Sarah began, her fingers drumming nervously against her desk. "But there's something I can't quite put my finger on. It's like there's something more, something I missed." Jen paused. "Are you saying there's something you didn't see before?" "I don't know. I'm starting to think I might have been so focused on Jason that I didn't see the bigger picture. Maybe I'm wrong about this whole thing. Maybe I missed something." Jen's response was firm. "Sarah, you've been through so much already. You've got the facts in front of you. Don't let doubt make you second-guess yourself now. Jason's been running this game for too long. We both know that. Whatever you're seeing, it's not a mistake." But even with Jen's encouragement, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The unease settled deeper in her gut. She needed to see Jason. She needed to confront him, but not without being absolutely certain. The next day, Sarah made her way to Jason's office, her steps more deliberate than ever before. The sleek, modern building stood tall against the skyline, just like its owner, polished, untouchable. But today, Sarah wasn't intimidated. She wasn't walking into that office as the younger sister trying to please everyone. No, this time she was walking in as a woman who knew the truth, who wasn't afraid to tear down the walls Jason had built around himself. Jason's assistant greeted her with a tight smile, recognizing the tension in the air. "He's expecting you, Ms. Matthews," she said, her voice too neutral, too professional. As Sarah walked toward the door, she caught her reflection in the glass. Pale, determined. She could almost feel her heart beating faster, a steady thrum that seemed to echo in her ears. She knocked once, and before she could hear the invitation, she pushed the door open. Jason looked up, his expression softening into his usual charming grin. "Sarah, always a pleasure," he said, standing up from his desk and moving around to greet her. Sarah took a deep breath, her hand gripping the edge of the doorframe as she stood her ground. "Cut the crap, Jason. I'm not here for small talk." Jason raised an eyebrow, but his smile didn't waver. "All right, I suppose I should have expected this." "I know everything," Sarah began, her voice low, sharp, "and I'm not walking out of here until you admit it." Jason's eyes flickered, but his posture remained casual. "Admit what, exactly?" "That you've been manipulating this whole family, that you've been covering up your dirty deals for years. The lies, the business investments, the embezzlement. I have it all, Jason, every last bit of it." Sarah's voice quivered, but she steadied herself. "I'm not afraid anymore. It's over." Jason's calm facade began to crack. "You don't know what you're doing, Sarah. You're playing with fire, and you're going to get burned." But Sarah didn't flinch. Instead, she took another step forward, her voice gaining strength with every word. "You don't scare me anymore. I'm not backing down. The truth is coming out, Jason." For a moment, there was silence, thick and heavy. Jason's eyes shifted briefly to the papers on his desk, and then back to Sarah. She could see his calculating mind at work, weighing his options. And then, he did something Sarah wasn't expecting. He leaned back in his chair, a dark smile tugging at his lips. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you've got all the answers, but you haven't seen the whole picture." Sarah's blood ran cold at his words. "What do you mean by that?" Jason stood up slowly, walking toward her with a confident stride. He didn't look like the man who was cornered. He looked like someone who had just revealed the first move in a game he was about to win. "You've been focused on the wrong person, Sarah," he said softly, his tone chillingly calm. "I'm not the one you need to worry about. You've been chasing shadows, and now you've just made a very big mistake." Sarah blinked, her heart pounding in her chest. "What the hell are you talking about?" Jason stepped back, leaning against his desk as if he had just delivered the final blow in a long-fought battle. "It's not me, Sarah. It's Mom." The morning light barely cut through the curtains as Sarah stood at the window, her mind heavy with the realization that the truth about her mother's role in Jason's manipulations was far worse than she had ever imagined. The confrontation was inevitable. She had to face Linda, her mother, and get the full truth. When Sarah entered the living room, Linda was sitting stiffly, her eyes avoiding Sarah's. The tension was palpable. "Mom," Sarah began, her voice hard. "We need to talk. Now." Linda didn't meet her gaze, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "About what?" "About you," Sarah said. "I know what you've been hiding. How you've let Jason control everything. You've let him tear this family apart." Linda's eyes widened, and she looked down, her voice faltering. "I didn't know what else to do, Sarah. I thought I was protecting you both." "You chose him over me," Sarah snapped, frustration and hurt mixing in her voice. "You let him manipulate you into believing his lies, and you've been covering for him for years." "I was just trying to keep the peace," Linda said, her voice weak. I thought if I kept quiet, it would all work out." Sarah's anger flared. "But it didn't, did it? Look at what he's done to us." Linda's tears welled up, and Sarah felt a flicker of something, perhaps sorrow, but it quickly faded. She had been hurt too much to care now. "I didn't know what to do," Linda whispered. "I thought I was helping." "Well, you weren't," Sarah said firmly, standing tall. "You protected him, and now we're both paying for it." Later that day, as Sarah sat at her desk, she couldn't shake the unease that lingered. The truth had broken her, but Jason still loomed over everything. She had the evidence, but did she have the strength to take him down? Her phone buzzed, Jen's message lighting up the screen. "You've got this, Sarah. I believe in you." A quiet determination settled over Sarah. The fight wasn't over. She had the truth. Now it was time for the final confrontation. The final showdown was inevitable. Sarah had spent weeks gathering the truth, facing her mother, confronting Jason. But now, the pieces of her fractured family were about to be put back together, or torn apart forever. She stood outside the courthouse, the cold wind brushing against her skin. But inside her, a storm raged. Her hands shook, but it wasn't fear that made them tremble. It was anticipation. Today, everything would change. Today, she would take back control of her life. Jason was sitting across from her, his usual confident smirk replaced by a look of palpable discomfort. The final battle was here, and for once, he wasn't the one pulling the strings. The judge called the court to order, and Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. She wasn't just fighting for justice, she was fighting for her own peace, for the peace of her children, for a life free of Jason's shadow. The case unfolded, and every piece of evidence Sarah had meticulously gathered was laid bare. Emails, bank statements, fake signatures, all the lies Jason had buried in the past were now exposed for everyone to see. But it wasn't just the evidence that mattered. It was the truth she carried with her, the truth of a family torn apart by deceit, manipulation, and greed. Jason's defense was predictable: denial, charm, and the same excuses he had used all his life. But this time, Sarah wasn't buying it. This time, she had the truth on her side. And then, the moment of reckoning. The judge, after reviewing all the evidence, turned to Jason. "Mr. Matthews," the judge said, his voice firm, "your actions have not only broken the law, but have also devastated your family. You are hereby held accountable." It was over. Jason's face went pale, and the smirk that had always been there, the one that made him seem untouchable, faded into something unrecognizable. Fear. For the first time, Sarah saw him for what he truly was, a man too afraid to face the consequences of his actions. Later, Sarah stood in the quiet of her apartment, looking out the window as the sun began to set. The battle was over, but the scars remained. She had lost so much, but she had also gained something she hadn't realized she was missing: her own strength. Her phone buzzed, and it was a message from Jen. "You did it! You're free!" The weight that had been crushing Sarah for years began to lift. She was free. She turned her attention back to the city below. Life would never be the same, but in that moment, Sarah knew she had found her power, her voice, and her peace. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. As I reflect on my journey, I've learned that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most profound transformations. We often find ourselves trapped by others' expectations or caught in the web of lies and manipulations. But the moment you take control of your life and confront the truth, no matter how painful, that is when real freedom begins. It's not just about justice for others, it's about justice for yourself. I've seen how powerful it can be to face your fears and speak your truth. We all have the ability to break free from the chains that hold us back, but it starts with choosing to stand up, no matter the cost. So, I ask you, what is holding you back from living your truth? What fears or insecurities are keeping you in the shadows? Life is too short to let others dictate who you are or what you deserve. Take that first step. Speak your truth and watch how everything else starts to fall into place. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what's been your biggest challenge or where you found the strength to overcome your own battles. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated for more stories that inspire and push us to be better. And if you didn't enjoy this video, let me know why. I'm always open to feedback. Where are you watching from? I'd love to hear from you. Let's keep this conversation going, and remember, you're stronger than you think.